Now, Dalma Heyn, you've penned a very provocative book where you've claimed that women, when they become wives, can go through psychological damaging experience that they might not even fully realize. Walk us through the transformation of women becoming wives.
Okay. What happens seems to be that a woman wakes up one day and says, I'm not the woman I was when I married. Now, it may be 3 months after the wedding, it may be 4 years after the wedding, but something she feels has happened so that she says, you know, where did I go? Obviously, there's nothing enormous that happens, or this would be something that we've all been talking about. It seems to be a subtle giving up of something. For example, a woman who goes to a party before she's married with her fiancé and has a wonderful time, and then when she gets married at the same party the next year, she's overseeing his drink intake or his food intake, and she's wearing a slightly different outfit because she's married now and she doesn't dress quite as sexily, so she's looking a little more modest. She's worried about talking to his boss. Little things like this, or many women say they've given up their male friends when they marry, or that they don't see their women friends as much. It's as if the minute she crosses the altar, she is adopting a new persona called a wife. And that wife is somebody who is a little bit more perfect than the woman was before she married.
Well, in fact, in Marriage Shock, I mean, you say that that women, when they become wives, leave their authentic self at the altar.
Now,
what would be driving that?
Well, it's a big jump before that, but the authentic self is the person who was sexy and fun and interesting and who the guy fell in love with. And then after marriage, suddenly, instead of worrying about being herself and keeping the relationship that she loved going, she starts to look at the relationship from the outside. It's as if she starts assessing herself and the marriage from the culture's point of view. So that suddenly, instead of thinking, am I interesting enough, am I fun enough, am I having a good time the way I used to, she starts thinking, am I virtuous enough, am I self-sacrificing enough, am I making my husband happy, am I going to lose him, am I giving him a hot lunch? I mean, many women say to me, the minute I got married, I suddenly thought this man needed a hot lunch. You know, there's a kind of, and what I was interested in is, where does this set of hidden rules come from? Where are the regulations that say that a woman is the guardian of the relationship and she's the one who oversees the marriage? It comes from the conduct books of the 18th century, which literally told a woman who was getting married at the birth of the middle class, when the Industrial Revolution was claiming men and women were being left in their separate spheres. These conduct books cropped up saying, not only this is how you carve a turkey and this is how you take care of a home, but who this woman should be. She should be smiling. She should be ever receptive. She should, you know, there are lists from the 50s that basically tell a woman how to be, the smile she should have on her face, the cookies that should be warm, the children should be fed, it's a perfect wife role.
But that image, that icon, I think you called it the Donna Reed syndrome.
Yes.
I mean, runs kind of contrary to our whole notion of modern, independent, self-directed women.
There's no question that that model is considered outdated. But ask most wives whether they feel guilty when they do things for themselves. Ask most wives whether, if they pursue their own goals and their own desires and their own lives, whether they feel a little selfish. Because the word selfish was the conduct book's greatest threat to wives. If you're selfish, you will lose him. He will leave you. And today, even with the youngest, sexiest, most assertive women, the minute they get married, the word crops into their vocabulary. Am I being selfish? I bought a dress. It was much more than I wanted to spend. It was my money. Am I being selfish by not putting it into the family expenditures? That sense of course we don't believe in this woman anymore. We think it's crazy, the Donna Reed with the platter of cookies, you know. But she still compels us. She still is standing there as we cross the altar, saying, be like me, or try to be like me, or you're going to lose affection.
And from this, your thesis continues, comes the psychological damage.
Because you're replacing yourself with an icon of goodness that very specifically doesn't connect. So that, I mean, what's interesting is that that particular smiling model of womanhood can't really connect with a man. There's no relationship there from that woman. So that what happens is that women often say that they stop talking to their husbands the same way. They stop asking for what they need. It's selfish. They stop asking for what they want in bed. It's overwhelming. They start, in other words, in deference to this smiling and needless icon, a woman, in a sense, exchanges her own desires and her own nature for a slightly more conventional and slightly tamer version of herself.
Now, there's a fascinating set of statistics here where the married women are 3 times more likely to be depressed than single women, yet the absolute reverse is true for men. I mean, are men completely oblivious to the psychological trauma that women are going through in their transformation?
Are men oblivious to women's trauma? Well, yes, and so are women. I mean, I don't think that this is something that that men are doing to women or that women are doing. It's simply that nobody has said to our young women who are getting married, you are entering an institution with rules that are as strict as the rules of the seminary or the rules of the church or the rules of the military. They're hidden now because they're, you know, nobody thinks of marriage really as an institution anymore. But the rules are very clear. A woman is to be frugal. A woman is to be giving. She's to be nurturing, selfless.
Now, if women, wives more particularly, are not particularly aware of this icon that they strive to be, it nonetheless would seem to have some manifestation because, again, I find in your book that 2/3 of all divorces are now being initiated by women, whereas 2 decades ago it was 2/3 were being initiated by men. What's happening there?
Well, I think what's happening is that women are saying they're racing into marriage the way we always have. 90% of all women in our cultures are going to get married before the age of 49. But with women's newfound monetary freedom and a sense that, you know, women's multiple relationships before marriage and their desire for as much pleasure as men have always had in marriage, women are saying, I can't do this. This place, this environment I've just entered is not big enough for me. I cannot be this woman that I'm expected to be. And women are leaving. And that's the shakeup that's so interesting in the culture because we're not talking about it. What we're still fantasizing about is the marriage that ends after 20 years by the husband, who is supposedly going off with a younger woman. That is not what's going on.
Well, and it's contrary also to the stereotypes we have of married and unmarried women. The spinster is the unfulfilled, lonely, seeking, you know,
the single woman who's tearing her hair out to be married because the only place that she can be happy is in this nurturant, blissful environment called marriage. That's the romantic myth that has always lured women into marriage. Interestingly, it hasn't been the myth for men. Men have never been expected, men have never thought marriage was going to be a different environment or that it would change them. You know, you don't see men thinking that they're suddenly going to become selfless or that if they're charged with being selfish, that that's a bad thing. But this romantic myth is far the opposite of what the truth is. Men are the ones who thrive in marriage. They always have. Married men are the least depressed segment of the population, and unmarried men are the most depressed segment of the population. And this goes against our idea that women are desperate to be married, and then once they get there are ecstatic. And I'm not saying that women aren't ecstatic to be married. I'm simply saying that the institution of marriage was not designed for women. It was designed for the well-being of men and children, and the person who was to oversee the well-being of men and children was the wife. There isn't a character in marriage whose job it is to make sure that wives are getting their hot lunch. You know, there isn't that character. And so we all say, I wish I had a wife.
Now, you're very pointed in the book and in your work to say, well, this isn't just a problem of bad husbands.
No,
this
no,
is,
no,
this
it's
is a
not,
function
has
of the
nothing.
institution of marriage. But I wonder, within the context of all those multiple pressures to be perfect, not simply to be a perfect
Yes,
wife,
yes.
but to be a perfect
To be everything.
whole bunch of things. If women aren't also getting frustrated or believing that the husbands are failing to live up to
Definitely.
a new ideal
Definitely.
that they never were expected to before.
Interestingly, somebody just about an hour ago, a man said to me, women under 35 seem to be so mad at men all the time. They're always furious. And I think that women are ascribing to men the institutional position. In other words, because nobody is really discussing the requirements of the institution, because we really prefer to believe there is no institution called marriage anymore, that it's just a piece of paper uniting us. I think women, when they wake up one day and say, I can't do this, I can't be everything to everybody, and I also want to have my own life, feel that their husbands are the ones who expected it of them, because the husband sort of does. Not because he's saying you must be Donna Reed, but because we all expect it of ourselves. And we sort of collude with each other in looking at ourselves from the outside. So the husband says, the house isn't clean. And the wife says, you're right, it isn't. What are we going to do about it? And he sort of says, I don't know. So she ascribes to him a position about what she should be that he doesn't really believe in any more than she does, but they sort of both grew up that way.
Yeah, and that's the very interesting part, because you claim, and this rings, you know, resonant with me, is that men don't want the virtuous Stepford wife, the robotic.
No.
They want the woman they married.
They
before were
really
wives.
do. And I hear from a lot of men saying, I don't know what's going on. Suddenly I have my mother living in the house. She's she's worried about what I eat, she's worried about what I do. And what's interesting is that women don't understand that, because women have in their bloodstream the notion that if they're not like this, they're not good wives. That if they are the way they were before, that they are going to lose their husbands. I mean, it's a very tricky thing. And what happens is, I think that women start to blame their husbands for holding them to this model of goodness that their husbands both want them to adhere to and don't. In other words, I think that it takes a very sophisticated man, very hip to all of this, to be able to say, look, don't make dinner for 20 on Saturday night. You're not going to be doing anything for me. If you want to do it, but don't. It's very hard to separate what the man wants from what the culture expects, because he kind of likes being taken care of. So what I find is that women do blame men for the cultural requirement.
Now, one aspect of wifely behavior within the context of marriage that isn't very much like the virtuous Donna Reed wife is adultery. And that in your earlier book, The Erotic Silence of the American Wife, I mean, you've talked to women who have committed adultery and take head on the notion that women by nature are monogamous.
Yes, but what was really interesting for me about that book was what it was saying about marriage, because my initial question was, why would a woman risk everything by having an affair? Now, we know men don't risk very much by having an affair, because the culture is trained to sort of look the other way, as are women trained to. But when a woman has an affair, if she's found out, she can lose everything, her home, her custody of her children, everything. So my question was, why would a woman risk this? And inevitably, what I got to was what I'm exploring in this book, which is that something goes on in marriage that makes her feel so not like herself, that adultery is the method by which she returns herself to herself. It's as if this blasphemous act, by doing it, she steps outside this perfect framework where her behavior is constantly monitored. She's broken all the rules of marriage by doing this, and she finally says, phew, I'm no longer in the running for the perfect wife. I've broken all the taboos, and I'm myself again. And here's a man who's interested in what I need. So it's not about anything that we've seen before except the return of the woman to herself.
But at the first surface, I mean, the incidence of female adultery is astounding. While the studies are imprecise,
yes.
I mean, the low end seems to be a quarter, and maybe as high as 70%.
Well, because who's going to really answer the question honestly?
Mm-hmm.
I just mean statistics in this way are very tricky because pollsters come to your house and your children are standing there. And
it's not a question that...
yeah, it's a hard question to answer. But what's interesting is that we have another fantasy, and it's like the idea that married women are so happy, and that is that married men have affairs and married women don't. Mm-hmm. And again, it's because we believe that women are morally beyond reproach, and wives wouldn't have an affair because women are more innately monogamous than men. In other words, again, it's this ideal of the perfect woman. But of course, every man who has an affair is having one with a woman, right? Unless he's gay. So there's got to be a similar statistic for the number of men having affairs. Not every man is having an affair with a single woman or a woman out of the country.
Now, but you have not been quite so unequivocal. I mean, you've
No.
said that in certain instances, adultery can have a therapeutic effect on the woman within the institution of marriage.
Because my obsession, as you can tell, is that women hold on to the people that they were and the sexual beings that they were before marriage. And I believe that everything in marriage conspires to desexualize the woman and therefore the couple. So of course women aren't sexually satisfied. They are taught, we are taught when we enter marriage, to be a little less demanding. And again, nobody is saying this to us today, but the whole idea that we are going to somehow alienate our husbands by being too experienced or too demanding or too overwhelming starts to flood even the youngest and most sexually experienced women. They start backing off a little bit when they get married, as if their full sexual selves are going to overwhelm their husbands. Now, where is this coming from? It's not coming from the husband. It's not coming from what we think we're teaching women, but it is in the culture. Be good. Be contented. Smile. Don't ask for too much. And I believe that when a woman has an affair and steps outside that and says, I can't do that anymore, that something comes back to her, that if she can bring that self again into the marriage, the man says, I got my wife back. Now, of course, the man may have kicked the wife out by this point, but when people say, can an affair, a woman's affair, be good for the marriage, I get into a lot of trouble by saying, well, in fact, if they live through it, it can be good for the marriage, but only because if it was not about the marriage, if it was about the fact that she lost herself and then she found herself, I know this sounds it's very difficult to explain, but a woman then comes back into the marriage with her full self again, and everybody's relieved that she's not the good woman.
But in the interviews that you've done with these women who have committed adultery, I mean, they're saying things like, he, the person I'm having an affair with, lets me finish my sentences. I feel like a real woman again. The spontaneity is back. That in turn suggests a real deficiency in the sexual relationship they had with the husband.
I think it's the sexual relationship with the husband, but my interpretation is that it's a deficiency in the institution of marriage, which requires her to somehow be less demanding than she was, so that it's not her husband's fault. Many of these women often tell me that their husbands are better lovers than their lovers, but that somehow they feel freer outside marriage to ask for what they want, to be themselves, to have the relationship on their terms, so that it becomes, to me, a sense, it's almost as if women are in the military and they step outside the military in order to have sex. I mean, if you look at it that way, I realize that, again, that sounds a little nutty, but marriage is the military in a certain way. It has as many rules for women about their sexuality, about how they look, about how they behave, about how we dress, as the Army does. And in the same way, women feel they have to earn love, the way a soldier earns the Purple Heart. Mm-hmm. I mean, there is that sense that I have to be good enough for him to love me. And outside that framework, with a guy who is not her husband, she doesn't have that feeling. She feels sort of freed of all that goodness and earning love. And that's what women tell me. They're not bored, it's not about their husbands even. It's about being in an environment that says, get what you need, do what you want, ask for what you want. And that's very, very new. I mean, that's a very new idea about adultery.
Now, while it's only anecdotal, I believe that over the last, 10 years, there's been a real shift in how society views male affairs, and that it's not a positive thing anymore. I think also increasingly that the men who have affairs are seen to be kind of, psychologically deficient.
Yes.
They're wanting.
Yes.
There's something the matter with them.
Yeah, what are you trying to prove by that kind of thing?
Same sort of dynamic at work with women?
No, not at all. I don't think that any woman that I talked to for the last book started out wanting to have an affair. I think that what I heard is that over time they became vulnerable to the person who came in saying, and what do you need? And what would you like? And that whole idea that somebody was existing to see to her needs. I mean, and that's what I'm suggesting is missing, not from her husband, but missing in the institution of marriage, that character, the wife,
right.
The wife for the wife. And so a lot of these men that became the wives' lovers were wives emotionally. They were nurturing, they were often younger, they were often mild-mannered. They weren't the social ideal of the perfect husband. They were often very friendly, loving men. As I said, it wasn't often necessarily about sex. It was about somebody saying, how do you feel? What can we do to make your life nice? And that character is something that every wife would love to have. Everyone wants to have that person in his or her life.
Now, unless it has been absolutely clear, we should make it that you're not saying that women shouldn't get married. You're not saying that you should go out and have adulterous affairs. But
no, of course.
But you are saying that women have to change their expectations of marriage and themselves.
I'm saying that men and women together have to understand that they are entering an ancient framework that requires them to walk into it and then look at themselves from the outside. So that I'm saying that if they start to understand that before they get married, they can, before you get married and you say, I never want to be like that couple over there. Let's never become a married couple. And then boom, you're married and there you are and you're starting to say, we've got to keep our house cleaner. We've got to, all the things that you do now that you're a married couple. If you can collude with each other the way you did before you're married and keep that kind of you and me babe feeling, I mean, I know that people will say, but what about children and what about responsibility? That doesn't naysay the importance of feeling like you're a team, that it's you and she, not the culture and you. That you often get married and feel as if it's you and your mother-in-law and your husband. It's not you and your husband anymore.
Now, we've talked about all these forces that mitigate against successful marriages, but one of the most fascinating statistics in your work was the notion that the people who married for fun, who claimed that was the principal motivation for why they got married to their partner, were the most likely
to have fun.
To have fun and have a happy and long marriage.
Now,
given the unfun job of raising children and economic burdens, how do you keep that in the relationship?
Well, first of all, by deciding that that's what's important. I mean, what's so interesting to me is that we always say, but marriage is a responsible thing, and you can't be dutiful if you're going to have fun. We trivialize the notion of having fun with each other. But isn't that why you married each other? I mean, you met somebody you had a great time with, and you had wonderful sex with, and you thought would be a wonderful partner throughout your life. If you at least keep that idea going, that it's the two of you, you can handle pretty much anything. And what I also found is that having fun together leads to the commitment and the responsibility and the dutifulness and the selflessness that you need in raising a family. That you don't have to sort of take on those values as if fun were trivial, silly, and had nothing to do with a relationship. It has a lot to do with your relationship. And what I found is that the couples who make it a priority keep that kind of us against the world feeling that I think challenges that institutional idea of I'm a wife now, you're a husband, we have to conform to the rules.